Yeah, I am, but I can't see anything. I wonder if it's because I'm in as like a presenter instead of a meeting.
How do I hit application window? How do I open the PowerPoint slide screen?
I mean, open up PowerPoint and have that.
Oh, okay. I got to boot up PowerPoint. Got it. I've got PowerPoint booted up, but shouldn't I be able to see my slides?
Yeah. Do you have the slides open?
Yeah. Application window.
Did you read that PDF? We saved it on your desktop there.
Oh yeah, let me go back over to that then.
For some reason, you're live, right? Like you have video on, correct?
Yeah, I've got my webcam on. I can see myself, and I see the dashboard, the Webinar Jam dashboard. You want me to? I don't see. Let me see if I go to the room. It doesn't show that you're there.
It doesn't show me as an admin. It should say 2 admin.
Yeah, okay. It does say 2 admin. Let me view Steve Rev, Aaron. So I see your name there. You want me to try to send you a chat or something, or?
Sure.
Let's see, to admin, I'll say, write message here. Are you there? Oh, admin just has me. When it says to admin, it goes to me.
I see it as well.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, the chat between us. But for some reason, I can't see your video. I'm going to try to register as a participant.
Yeah.
And see if that helps. So I'm going to get out of this live broadcast and register. Well, register as a participant. I wonder if I can log in. Let me see.
Okay, how to size your PowerPoint, but I think you already did that, but maybe I should go through that. That says...
You can skip that. You can go down to the other stuff.
Okay, we did the 16:9 ratio, preparing PowerPoint. Now that you have PowerPoint size, it's time to set up individual but not full. This will allow you to see your Webinar Jam interface. We'll see. Select slideshow from tabs. Set up slideshow. Okay. Set up slideshow. Browse by individual window. Okay. Okay, so that looks good. select slideshow from the tabs again. Choose from either the beginning. Slideshow. Slideshow. And okay, press the green.
Here we go. I see you now.
I see you now.
Interesting. So there's a little bit of a delay between what's coming through your webcam and when you actually say it. So it's about a 5-second delay, just to let you know.
That'll be a 5-second delay to the participants?
Yeah. Maybe even 10 seconds, I'd say.
That doesn't seem right.
Yeah, but I guess it's either like a safety issue or like it's just a delay. It should be fine though.
Okay. So I'm on, I can see myself. I've got my PowerPoint slide up. But it says, because I have the individual slideshow window, yes, when I start screen sharing, press the green screen share. Select the slideshow from your choices. Where's the green screen share? Yeah, I'll press again. It's just not green. Again, it says your entire screen or application window. Isn't it application window? How come that keeps going back to entire screen? So there's a screen share. Oh, maybe there it is. Yeah. So I turn on screen share, I hit application window, and I can see my webcam and I can see my PowerPoint slides on the, but as soon as I close this out, I still don't see my PowerPoint slides. It's still just me. Oh, I got to click on them. Gotcha. Oh. At my entire screen. Oh, there it is. So, okay, so my PowerPoint's, do you see it? Now, how do I advance them? Usually I hit the return button and it advances, but it's not. Yeah, the arrows aren't either. I did. Nothing. No, I'm on the WebJam. It's filling my WebJam window screen. On the actual PowerPoint itself. Yeah, I'm there. Yeah, but it's not showing up on the webcam, is it? Is your screen black? Yeah, they didn't move. Okay, I went back to, once I went over there, I went back to application window. It's not in my application window. The slides aren't anymore. No, they're still open. I wonder if I have to, oh, there it is. Okay, I have to go into, so are you seeing just the home slide? Do you see it? Okay. Tell me when the second one loads. Okay, I'm gonna tell you when I click it and then count off the seconds so see what the delay is. Okay, 1, 2, 3, click. Okay, all right, so that's good to know. So, mhm. Mhm. Okay. So it looks like I'm not able to advance the slide in WebJam. If I, yeah, okay. So let me just do that again. And then I can come over here because what I'm going to tell the participants is, hey, Aaron's in the background, my partner. We're going to take questions at the end. However, as questions pop up, if you need some clarity, write them in. Aaron will, if I see something that might be universally confusing what I said, I will pause and take some select questions. But generally, we're going to wait until the end. Aaron will aggregate them into topics or themes, and seeing how much time we'll have, we'll get to those. And if not, how does that sound? And so what I should do regularly is slide back over to this the WebJam screen to see if you type me in a question. Is that right? Oh, great. That's right. Okay. Yeah, Jordan will. He more than likely won't be on at the beginning, but he should come on about 10:45. You should see his name. Did I give you his name, Jordan? Oh, I thought you could just give him. Oh, I thought you could just give him audio, like unmute him and allow him to just talk. Oh, so if someone's going to engage with me, they actually have to go through. Oh, I don't think that's going to work. Just okay. And so maybe for tomorrow, um, we'd have to register him, or would he have to do the webinar jam setup himself? Okay, I'm texting him right now because he's a really busy guy, and I know that's just out of the question for today. I just thought it would be a little simpler. I mean, I've been on webinars where the moderator can open it up to individuals or the whole group. So must just be Webinar Jam doesn't have that easy function. If not on right now. I thought you said mute my microphone. Didn't you say? Oh, so I just got to speak to myself with my microphone off. That's funny. Did you see my lips move? Oh, I'm sorry. It's like my teenagers. I swear they just see my lips moving. Aaron was just texting me, I think your microphone is muted. Oh, I apologize. Thanks for coming, everybody. I recognize many of the attendees, old friends, current clients and partners, and trusted mentors. So thank you, everyone, for the support today. And congratulations to you for taking an hour out of your busy Wednesday to reinforce your leadership and management capabilities. This is it says a lot about you to recognize that. We know that leadership development is a process, not an event. And part of that is to reinforce the fundamentals. We've worked together. Those of you know that I believe that mastery is built upon the fundamentals. And usually when we want to straighten something out, we go back to the fundamentals. So hopefully today will be a reminder that you have those communication skill sets to give you the confidence and competence to not avoid these conversations and proactively address them. Those of us who have worked together before, some of this content will not be new, but hopefully some of it will be, and I'll provide some fresh insights for you to give you the mojo to proactively initiate these conversations. I'm just looking at the attendees. We are at the top of the hour, so let's dive into things as people join. That will be good. I'm going to turn off my webcam and go right to the slideshow. We'll get into the content for the day, but thank you, everybody. Steve Rudolph here. Appreciate you coming today and working together and managing effective workplace conversations. I'm going to shoot over to the slide share right now, and we will get into the content. Okay. Aaron, thank you. If something goes awry here, please just give me a buzz and we'll dive into it. Managing difficult workplace conversations. So folks, these are the conversations that great leaders like yourself, we tend to avoid. Even experienced managers can tend to avoid these. And just a few principles just to give the backdrop for today is that when you avoid these workplace conversations, these difficult, challenging conversations, you compound things, because in management we say we get what we tolerate and what we manage. So everyone knows what's going on in the workplace, right? Everyone knows so-and-so has a negative attitude, or so-and-so's performance levels are slipping, or so-and-so is not pulling their weight on the team. So everyone knows the narrative. And so when you avoid these conversations, you compound your challenges, because now you have a leadership credibility issue. Before it was just wringing your hands, but now people are waiting and watching to see, what are you going to do as the boss? So foot dragging is never the solution, and hope is not a strategy. So today's really about having the confidence and competence to proactively addressing situations earlier than later for all the right reasons. You know, the other bind we get into is, I think all of us would say that we care about our people. And if you don't care about your people, you shouldn't be in management, of course. But we want our people to be successful. We want them to progress and grow in the workplace. And so those two, to me, seem to be opposing realities that just can't coexist. You can't say you care about your people and then avoid being honest and candid with them about how they're currently doing. I just can't see those two holding. So we have to, I guess, just appreciate that I'm going to have this conversation with you because I care about you. So the outcomes, our behaviors and skills often follow our intention. So if our intention is we want people to be successful and grow, then it's upon us to be proactive in giving people some tough news, even though it may be uncomfortable. So that's a little just setup for today. Hey, soon to come, stay tuned. We have an upcoming webinar based on a survey, a pre-webinar survey we did. There's going to be two coming. We're going to do an advanced version of this. I want to say I made a promise today that we would have a live real play. I don't think that's going to happen today because of some technical issues. It may on tomorrow's webinar, so I apologize. But in the advanced version of Difficult Workplace Conversations, we're going to have a lot more real and role plays on the call so you can hear what some of these skills look like in action. But coming soon, stay tuned. New manager promotion pathway and process. Look, the majority of management promotion and hiring decisions made by very smart people like us in a range of industries, we get wrong. We promote the wrong person for the wrong reason. So we know that to be true. We know that managers have a 73% variance rate on employee engagement, according to Gallup and other people that study this stuff. And we know engagement is one of the strongest correlations to the bottom line profitability and productivity. So we got to get these management decisions right, because it's really expensive if we don't. So we're going to learn to identify talent DNA within your current workforce. There are people within your sight and range that maybe aren't on your radar screen. They're not putting up the big numbers all the time. They're not making a lot of noise in the workplace, but they could have potential talent that we've got to learn to recognize and avoid bad manager promotion and hires. And I'm going to provide for you some really valuable tools and processes that you can begin using right away to bring some more rigor and discipline to your manager promotion process. So stay tuned for that. You'll get some advertising on that. Okay, let's dive into the program. So if you've done martial arts, or you're a musician, or any skill, any sport, basically, you learn the basics. And those are kind of discrete, broken down skills that you're able to train and receive feedback on. So, these difficult conversation skills are like a martial art kata. We're gonna look at each one independently today, but human beings are messy and unpredictable. And so you can't just say, well, if they do this, do that. People are just too strange for that to happen. And you know that to be true. So it's like my martial art sensei says, we'll ask him questions and say, okay, if you're in the dark and you're going down the alley and someone comes up behind you and says, give me your money, what do you do? And my sensei always says, well, that depends. So, it depends what you do, but we still practice the fundamentals, and hopefully they become useful when we need them. So today we'll look at the idea that we're practicing a kata for a form, and the dynamic interplay of that, though, is very unpredictable. So here's the 5 core skills today. That's why you signed up. Here's the promise. We're going to review in chronological order and spend a little time. Hey, I forgot to mention, if you have questions, populate them into the chat question box. Aaron, my colleague, will be aggregating those. We're going to address most of the questions at the end of the webinar. But if there's a question that pops up as I'm presenting content that I think may have some universal usefulness for people, I will address that, because maybe something I said is confusing or doesn't make sense to you. So please populate your questions. Aaron will keep track of those as we go along. 5 core skills for managing tough workplace conversations. Look, folks, this is not a performance management conversation yet. It could be. It could turn into an HR situation. It's not yet. So this isn't a velvet hammer manager conversation. This is where our main intention is to seek mutual beneficial outcomes. We'll talk about those. We have to keep the conversation safe, so people are in a two-way dialogue. Otherwise, they'll get into defensiveness. They'll shut down on us and get argumentative. And we'll talk about when people do those things. Set skill number 2, solid agendas, folks. You've got to set a good agenda. It's going to help create clarity for you, that there's a bullseye at the end of it. And it's going to help clarity for your team member, so the conversation is tracking along mutually beneficial objectives and outcomes. Push-pull method. This is just basic, simply the ability to make powerful statements. That's the push. I'm going to push a statement at you to try to shock you, create some cognitive dissonance, and get you to think about your life and your performance at work. So they're intentional. Or the pull method, which is just basically Stephen Covey's seek first to understand and then be understood. So to know you already have this powerful toolkit of making powerful statements and asking powerful questions to invite the person to relook at the situation, perhaps. We've got to get good in these conversations. We talk about the distinction between content, that's the topic we're talking about, the behavior, the performance, and the process. Process is how we are holding the conversation. If we are not holding the conversation in a productive, professional way, which means respectful, then the chances of us of achieving the mutual beneficial outcome decrease significantly. So we'll talk about when people do get defensive or argumentative, what do you do to get the conversation tracking again? And then finally, we're going to bookend these conversations with making powerful requests and getting agreements. As my mentor told me, trust does not exist without agreements, and agreements do not exist without trust. So we're back to the trust quotient, which means we're going to do and say the things we make promises to others to do, and we'll look at requests and agreements at the end. Those are the 5 core skills, folks. I want you to appreciate that under stress, as the Navy SEALs will tell us, we fall to our level of training, not our hopes and aspirations. Under stress, the majority of us fall to our level of training. So these fundamental skills, and these aren't the only skills today, but these core skills, I want you to appreciate that when the conversation goes sideways or you feel yourself getting emotionally distressed and feeling like you're going into fight or flight, or your default behaviors, these skills can keep you going into default mode. Those are our 5 skills. I'm going to swoop over to the webinar jam to see if there's any questions at this point. Doesn't appear to be, so we'll just keep marching along here, and we're going to go into these skills. First, folks, let's just be clear here. If you can have these skill sets, but if you don't have these qualities in the workplace, in your relationship with others, it makes these conversations tougher, as you know. If you have not taken the time to build trusting workplace partnerships and relationship with your team members, these conversations are tough because people don't trust you. And so we have to continue to build the social currency of relationship to be able to make withdrawals on them when we have to give people tough news, because people want to know if you care. We'll talk about that. You've got to be a credible leader. So what is your track record to date? And are you credible and reliable leader? Are you a good communicator? Do you continually ensure that there's a good frequent flow of two-way communication in the workplace? People are clear on your expectations. People are clear on strategies and goals and how we're going to achieve, customer service levels and so forth. Do people feel like they're not being micromanaged? Do you trust people and give people an appropriate amount of autonomy in the workplace so they're motivated and empowered to work there? People want to work for bosses, give them appropriate freedom to do their jobs the way the jobs they think should be done. And finally, I put on here, a perception of fairness, or do you have good old girl and good old boys club in the workplace? Do people perceive people get different treatment and so forth? So fairness is a big concern for people in the workplace. So, if these 5, these are just not, of course, the only 5, but, these have to be present in order for these tougher workplace conversations, I think, to have a chance of succeeding. So today's a little bit of a retreat and reflection in any of these areas where you could strengthen starting tomorrow to build up the kind of workplace that I think we all desire. So you're sitting down, you've decided to have this tough workplace conversation with people. And, I think most people want to know 2 things. Do you care about me? It's a trite adage. People don't care how much you know till they know how much you care. But it's true. It's like the golden rule, right? We don't have to reinvent good management and leadership. So again, what are your intentions? And do you want me to be successful and win here? So these conversations today, to keep them psychologically safe, there's some moves we have to be very explicit and very overt with to ensure that people are clear on your intentions. And we'll get into those skill sets. Okay, what do you see? What's your first perception? We're going to pause for just a second on manager mindsets. What's your mindset? What are your belief systems? Because action follows belief, whether it's conscious or unconscious. So let's pause for a second and use this really classic Gestalt imagery. Do you see a goblet or 2 faces? And if I see a goblet and you see 2 faces, or vice versa, who's right? Who's wrong? Well, we're both right? It's a perception we have. And so there's significant research in, Jim Collins' book, Good to Great, and before him and Jerry Porce's book, Built to Last. And there's been many books on kind of this comparison of what separates great from good companies. And, there's a lot of variables. So one that has pretty compelling research to it that we know has significance is those cultures, those organizations, those teams, and those managers who have the ability to embrace the genius of the yes and thinking and reject the tyranny of either or are places that are going to remain competitively advantaged in the marketplace. We know there's good research, significant research here. We call these tensions of opposites or polarities, and versus problems to be solved. And many of these human performance challenges we place in the workplace every day, these are tensions to be resolved. These aren't, our people aren't problems to be solved. In other words, if the only tool you have is a hammer, then all problems look like what? A nail, right? So we don't want to be that hammer manager. We want to have the fluidity and the dexterity to be able to manage multiple viewpoints in these conversations. So when we go in these conversations, we have a point of view. We have an expectation. We may have a line in the sand, a non-negotiable. And, yes, and we are open to being influenced possibly. And that's the tension of opposing points of view as we get in debates and arguments. So I want to encourage you as you move forward with these 5 skill sets today is to also think about your mindset. Do you assume positive intent? Or do you think you have some employees that come to work every day wanting to screw you and I'm gonna mess with the boss today and my teammates? If you hire good people, that's not the way people think about things, but it may be a conspiracy theory we start to concoct. But be aware of your mindset and develop the ability to think yes and when you're managing tensions of opposites or polarities in the work environment. Fun stuff, right? Okay. Hey, people go to war over, perceptions like this, I think. So we won't go into politics today. Okay. All right, I'm going to give you a test right now. Let's talk about emotional intelligence, and then I'm going to give you a little test. So emotional intelligence, you've probably heard this, EQ or EI, is fundamentally the ability to be aware first of your emotional and psychological states. So where does stress show up for you in tough workplace conversations? Where do you go to under stress? And, everyone is a little bit different. Do you get a tight throat? Do you feel heat and flush in your face? Do you get sweaty palms? Does your heart race? Does your stomach go into knots? But everyone kind of has a zone where the body says red alert, red alert. So be aware, where does stress show up for you? Because I want you to appreciate that in these conversations, there's controllables and uncontrollables. And of course, as managers, we like to focus on the controllables. And so one of the areas that we can control is our own emotional and psychological states by being aware of what's going on. And 2, then, of course, the ability to regulate those emotions, because we're all going to have them. Like, you're going to feel it. We can't deny, I'm going to leave my emotions out of this conversation. Good luck. Let me know how that goes for you. It just is not real. And so we come in with our full DNA in these conversations. So we just want to be aware and be able to regulate those during the conversations so we can have a positive, constructive impact on the direct report and the conversation. So one of the things that you have to get very comfortable is with silence and pausing. And silence and pausing is your friend. Just like in sales, if you have a salesperson that is not comfortable with silence, they're not going to be that effective, because silence, of course, and pausing used deliberately is very powerful in a conversation. If you're in sales, you know what I'm talking about. But the same thing is true for these conversations. We want to be able to use silent and pause to get the impact or effect that we want. So here's what we're going to do. For 30 seconds, this is all you're going to do. Drop whatever you're doing. If you're on your email because I'm boring you, drop it for a second. For 30 seconds, I just want you to sit or standing, wherever you are, and just breathe, however you breathe. This is not a yoga or some sort of spiritual training here. But I just want you to breathe and pay attention to your breath and the state of your mind before and after. 30 seconds, go. You are just breathing. And that is 30 seconds. Did that feel forever? It feels like a long time, isn't it, if you're not used to just catching a breath in the day? But that's what it feels like. And so we have to be comfortable being uncomfortable. So I want you to work this muscle set and train this muscle set in these conversations to be present to your breathing and being present to your emotional and changing physiological states and being able to regulate those. And the one controllable you have over and known to be super effective, it's the go-to move, is to start paying attention to your breathing and make sure you're getting some good, diaphragmatic breaths going down there into the belly versus the high up in the chest ones. And then 2, I don't have this up here, but we're going to work in the skill, but it's important to name and note what your stress is. So, it's just basically saying, wow, man, I'm really feeling angry right now. Well, I really feel my throat constricting. So when you just start to name it, you, I guess you build in a regulator system for you to start to controlling the emotions, which are natural and going to have. Okay. I would have had you sit and breathe for 60 seconds, but that will cost you $49.95. And so I didn't want to, have to charge you today to breathe. That's the advanced class. Okay, as a joke. Folks, okay, where are we at? What's the difference between typical workplace feedback, Steve, and straight talk? And I'm gonna go right into straight talk right here. This is the definition we're gonna use today. This is out of a book by Loretta Melandro, really a great book, Say It Right the First Time, a terrific book on leadership communication. And I love this definition. Most managers I work with find this definition to be very useful. It's a good operational definition. It's accountable language, which we'll get into, that fosters safety and collaboration while requesting commitment and action. So if you think about our 5 skills today, we're going to work on and focus on. The first one is psychological and emotional safety. So we're going to really focus in these conversations on keeping the conversation safe. And when we mean safe, that means people aren't argumentative. They're not shutting down on you. They're not becoming defensive. They're not blaming, making excuses, throwing people under the bus, hanging out dirty laundry, dropping bombs, all the things that people do to be out of accountability. I call those not unprofessional behaviors. You can call them non-productive, or Loretta would call them non-accountable behaviors. I think we're all getting at the same thing. That's holding the person back from being a better version of themselves. So in these conversations, we have to keep them safe because we want them to be collaborative, two-way dialogues. This is not HR conversations yet. It could be. So it depends. And we'll talk about documentation and HR processes here in a second because the conversation could go that way. But these are still a typical workplace conversation. But we are gonna have a two-way dialogue. It's not gonna be a one-way performance management hammer fest, but we are going to get some commitment and action and agreements. So that's our working definition today, and hopefully that's useful for you. And I'll refer back to this when we go through these skills, but I'll go back to this previous slide. So Steve, what's the difference between straight talk and feedback in these managing difficult conversations? Well, for the context for today, folks, is that you have been a good boss. You've been a good manager, meaning that you have given this person some feedback on a behavior or a performance that they need to take a look at or make some adjustments or correction on. And you've given them feedback a couple times. So you've been a good boss. The feedback has been quality and it has been timely. you have noticed a pattern of behavior now where the person is not making the changes that require them to potentially be in good employment standing with your organization. So versus a managing difficult workplace or a tough workplace conversation because it was a one-off, something happened. You know, the person treated a customer badly, or the person, violated a significant workplace policy, or they created a hostile work environment, or, something to really get your attention that was really a red flag warning that you had to have a conversation with somebody quickly. That's not the conversation we're talking about today, although that happens. We're talking more that you've seen a pattern, you've been a good boss, and you're going to address something in the same behavior or performance in a different manner to get their attention. Because if the feedback you gave was effective, they would have changed, but they haven't changed. So we are going to stay in that box of controllables, how we can control the conversation. So the skills today are designed to create a little more sense of urgency and get this person's attention. Managing difficult workplace conversations using the skill of straight talk. If that works for you, you can use something different if you want. We'll refer back to this. Skill number 1, creating emotional and psychological safety, because we want these to be two-way dialogues. So we're seeking mutual beneficial outcomes. It's good for me, it's good for the company, it's good for the team, and it's also good for the individual, because hopefully they like being gainfully employed at your company. So here's a few go-to skills that you already know how to do these. You just have to put them on steroids or be very intentional about them, be very conscious about them. Sorry, I paused there. Be transparent, and that's pretty, we'll get into that. Be honest. These conversations are not dance around the bush. These conversations are pretty direct. And, be appropriately positive. When I say appropriately, what does that mean? Well, some people say, Steve, shouldn't I start these off being positive? Oh, you've been doing such a great job here. You're such a great team member. Well, look, do what you want to do. If the person has earned it, then give it to them, but avoid false praise, because you need to feel comfortable, or you want to be nice, or whatever reason you have going on. But don't send people false signals about where their performance is in relationship to expectations. Don't do it. It just causes more confusion, and you know that to be true. So if you don't have anything appropriate or relative positive, I just don't say it, quite frankly. If I do, I'll say it. So, we want to be authentic leaders. So if it's authentic, people have strong bullshit detectors. So they'll sense it anyway if you're just trying to placate them. So, if you decide for yourself, but I tend to generally avoid them at this point. Remember, I've already given them feedback a couple times on this behavior. And in that feedback, more than likely, I gave them some positive or affirmative feedback, and some strength-based feedback. I've already done that. And again, if it had worked, we might not be here right now. So here's a few techniques that you have at your tool. Contrasting statements. This is a statement followed by what you don't want. Started with what you don't want, followed by what you do want. And this is out of the book, Crucial Conversations. I want to give credit to the author. It's a great tool. It works really well. Don't overuse it, because it can feel gimmicky and techniquey. Sometimes if I think the person's going to be pretty reactionary to what I'm doing, I'll start off the conversation with this statement, but you can use it at any point in the conversation. And it simply sounds like this. Hey, Jennifer, what I don't want to happen is for you to feel like this is a one-way performance management conversation where your job is on the chopping blocks. That's not it at all. What I do want is for us to have a rich two-way dialogue and come up with mutually beneficial outcomes to change the situation. So start off with what you don't want, followed by what you do want. And that's a way to communicate your transparency. What are you up to? So this one, am I in trouble? So a lot of times when people say, hey, I need to talk to you about, and we'll get into the agenda. If people are in trouble, say, yes, you're in trouble, or you could be in trouble. But again, be honest. A lot of times it ends up, well, it depends on how this conversation goes. It depends on your believability and willingness to commit to a new course of action. It depends. So, use the language that's most honest, but be honest and be candid. with them at the front end, because, you know, they're going to be in a threat state, right? Am I in trouble? So just address it right out the gate. And that's a way to keep it psychologically safe. And that contrasting statement is a way to do that. Just say, hey, my intention is, and tell them what your intention is. My intention is for us to work this out, and I need you to change your behavior. But my intention is that we move forward together and we enjoy a long, productive work future together. So just state what your intention is and use that language. And then, of course, Stephen Covey's seek first to understand, then be understood. There's almost no downside in these conversations. If you ever start feeling excited, just seek first to understand. It'll buy you some time. It invites them to share their perspective, which you may disagree with. It doesn't matter. But just say, hey, Jorge, help me understand why you think behaving this way is the best path forward. Just ask a question. Try to be curious. That wasn't that curious. It was kind of sharp, but that's a tool set you have. Skill 1, creating psychological and emotional safety. Remember, these conversations can start off safe, but they can go south or sideways, right? So these are tools I want you to be able to go back to rebuild safety in the conversation. Skill number 2. I hinted to that in the previous one, but get very good about setting strong and clear objectives. And go slow here. Folks, this is not the conversation. Some people start getting into the conversation while they're setting the agenda. The agenda is not the conversation. You are setting the table to have the conversation. So go slow here. You may have to repeat it several times because people will get excited, right? They'll start getting defensive, or as soon as they say why you're here, they'll start arguing or denying or whatever they want to do. That's okay. That is okay. But we are not going to get into the conversation, he said, she said, whatever, until we get agreement. This is what we're talking about and how we're going to talk about it. And you'll see why it's so powerful, because when things do go south, and they often do, you can come back to the agreement you made around the agenda, and it gives you an anchor point for these challenging conversations. Step 1, of course, state what the objective of the conversation and avoid vagueness. Don't say, hey, hey, I want to check in to see how work's been going for you. That's not the issue here. The issue is, I want to discuss your continued pattern of a negative attitude and apparent lack of cooperation with team members. That's what we're here to talk about. Do you see the difference? Vague versus specific. Just come right out and name the pink elephant in the room. And that is going to get their attention, of course, right away. But it also builds clarity into the conversation. So get good at this. That's straight talk, folks. You see straight talk versus vague talk. Oh, I spelled vague wrong. How embarrassing. I'm surprised I caught that, quite frankly. Do you appreciate straight talk? There it is. And so you are not mincing words here. And step 2, this is optional. So you can ask for permission. Say, are you okay discussing this right now? That gives the person autonomy. It's professional respect. It says, hey, it signals this is a two-way collaboration, not a performance management conversation as promised. I say optional because it depends, as my sensei said. It depends on the person, the grievance, the behavior, the violations. I may not be okay asking, we're going to have it. So I may just avoid that. It depends. Now, of course, it comes up, are you okay discussing this right now? What if they say no? Well, these are important conversations, obviously. And so you want to make sure the person's in a good state of mind. So maybe they're not in a good state of mind. And, something might have happened at home or with a customer. And so, when they say no, I just usually, and it's very rare, but I'll just check in, hey, is everything okay? I just go into empathy. Is everything okay? Is there anything you need to know about? Because this is an important conversation. And this is the caveat. We are going to have this conversation. Would tomorrow at 9 a.m. be better? See where we're at? Oh, no, okay. No, I'll have it right now. I'm good. Usually that's what they say. But just in case they're not in a good frame of mind, it gives them, you've given them the professional respect. But it's a powerful asking for permission and getting their agreement to have it. And all things being equal, I tend to use that because I find there's really no downside. Setting strong objectives. How much time? If there's a time you want to set on it, 45 minutes, 20 minutes, put a time on it. Make sure the space is you're not going to be interrupted. Computers are shut down. And by the way, I didn't mention in the beginning, folks, difficult workplace conversations, I'll point out the obvious. You need to plan for these conversations. You probably know that. We do not wing these conversations like coaching conversations. We don't wing them. So we write these things out. We write the agenda. We write some of our questions and comments, and we're clear on where we're going. So we really prepare for these. Obviously, that really helps them to be successful. And I might say, generally speaking, folks, when are the best time to have these conversations? When are we at our best? When does the brain have full glucose levels and operating? In the morning. Most of us are best in the morning. These are not conversations to have at the end of the day or on a Friday, on a Friday at 4:45. Okay, so keep that in mind too. I didn't mention that in the beginning. Setting agendas, skill number 2. Skill number 3. I'm just going to see if we have any questions at this point. Okay, I'm breaking up really bad. That was a while ago. I apologize. I have audio now. There it is. Oh, I'm sorry, guys, if I missed that. Please let me know, and Aaron, you too, if audio or visual is failing. I was in the wrong screen there. Thanks, everyone, for the feedback. Okay. Here's the push-pull, folks. These are tools that you have. We forget about them. These are making powerful direct statements. That's the push. Or pull, asking questions. So this is a tool set that you have on your tool belt. Folks, a reminder, if your feedback had been effective in the first place, you wouldn't be having this conversation. So now we're in a position where you have to change the tone, you have to change the thrust, you have to change the amplitude, the altitude, the amplification of this conversation, because to date, evidently, you have not gotten their attention. And so now you are our objective is to get their attention and let them know there's some possible seriousness now to the conversation. And so these statements are achieved to do that. Here's a few examples. Just let these land on you. You've broken my trust. Pretty powerful, right? Think about if you were to start the conversation off with, "Hey, Tom, you've broken my trust." You think that would get Tom's attention? You've broken your agreements. Therefore, you've broken my trust, Tom. Let that pause sink in. Let that silence sink in. You're better than this. Hey, you have leadership potential. You're selling yourself short here. You know what, Jane, I'm not sure you're a good fit for our culture anymore. Push conversations. You feel the impact of those folks? You feel the tension they create? That's on purpose. Some managers will say, "Oh, Steve, I think that's too harsh," or "I would never say that." Hey, say what you want. I'm just suggesting that what you've said so far has not worked. In other words, you have not gotten their attention. So these are tools for getting their attention. And there is no way, our goal in these conversations, folks, is not to avoid tension. We do want to avoid fight or flight behaviors. But short of that, be very clear, our intention in these conversations is to create tension and let them feel the tension. That's the objective. That's the pathway forward. That's not something to be avoided. And that's what the push statements do. Pull, simple open questions. Hey, what do you want? My favorite question, actually. What do you want? What do you want? Because if you want to work here, you're not showing it. If you want to be employed here, you're not really demonstrating that. You're falling short, so that I don't know what your intentions are. So what are your intentions here? So just simple questions and sit back. Let the silence marinate. Let them marinate in the silence. Why should I trust your word this time? You've broken 2 agreements already. Why should I trust your word? Hey, Jennifer, how are you selling yourself short here? 3 simple questions to get their attention. By the way, like in sales, whoever asks the questions in control of the conversation. So get really good at asking great questions, folks, because now when you ask these questions, what does your team member have to do? They have to think, they have to work. And that's not a bad thing, is it? Push-pull method, skill number 3. Simple and powerful, creating tension. Okay, here's the juicy one. Okay, you're all sitting there now. Okay, Steve, what if they say this? What if they do that? What if they say this? These are the common things that people do, right? Defensiveness, they'll shut down on you, which is stonewalling, cross their arms, make excuses, throw people under the bus, they'll argue, deflect, and avoid. So if you watched the webinar trailer video, I made a promise in there that I would give you a silver bullet. Of course, this isn't a paint by number silver bullet conversation, but I find this technique to be almost a silver bullet most of the time to work really well. Get really good at naming these behaviors and then set micro ground rules during the process of the conversation. Remember, there's the content of what we talked about, what we're talking about, the behavior, performance, and then there's the process, how we are having the conversation. And when these behaviors show up, the conversation becomes non-safe, non-productive. People are using this non-accountable language. And so the way to correct that when people do these things is simple as simple gets. Set micro ground rules as you go along. It sounds like this. Hey, Jennifer, look, I notice when I point out your negative attitude that you make excuses. Do you notice you do that? Are you aware that's a pattern of yours? She'll say yes. She'll say no. Whatever she says, it doesn't really matter. I'll say, well, you do. You are right now. And since you made an agreement that we're going to have a professional conversation, and professional for me, folks, is that big catch-all word. I use it all the time. It's one of my values because respect falls under that. Accountability falls under that. Responsibility falls under that. And so they're being non-accountable or non-responsible here. So that, therefore, they're being unprofessional. That's the language I use. Well, you're being unprofessional. You can use unproductive. It's unprofessional. Here's the micro agreement. Jennifer, can I get your agreement to stop making excuses when we have these professional conversations or when I'm giving you feedback? Whatever language you want to use, get their agreement right there. Can I get your agreement to stop? Oh, yeah, sure, I'll stop. And then I usually follow up something like, hey, and if you do it, do I have your permission to just point out that you're breaking your agreement? I like to use that agreement word. It gets their attention. Oh, okay. And they'll do it again because, you know, they probably been making excuses for half their adult life. So I'm not going to change their behaviors. I got to be realistic. But I'm going to, hey, you're making excuses again. Hey, Jennifer, can I note you're making excuses again? So set these micro ground rules as you go along, folks. And it's a way to clean up these non-productive behaviors. Hey, I notice you're shutting down on me, Jeremy, right now. I notice your arms are crossed and you've ceased engaging with me in this conversation. Do you notice you're doing that right now? No, whatever they say. I guess so. Well, you are. And, you know, the agreement we had at the beginning, this is why you want to set strong agendas, folks. You come back to the agenda. Hey, we made an agreement when we set the agenda that we'd have a professional conversation, which is a two-way dialogue, and you've stopped being professional right now. Can I get your agreement to please don't shut down on me during the conversation? So this is how we address these human behaviors that often show up, is we simply name them. This is what you're doing. Can you please cease and desist during these conversations? I appreciate that. Thank you very much. And then you can go back into talking about the conversation. So separating process from content. This is the process, how we're holding the conversation, and we want to make commitments to being professionals in the workplace. Let's go to our final skill. All these conversations, like feedback, folks, are bookended by an agreement and a commitment to. Can I get your agreement to? Will you agree to? My request is in the future, will you do this? That's how trust is built in the workplace. No agreements, no trust, no trust, no agreements. So this is a powerful, very powerful accountability tool you have, is to make strong requests. Now, Folks, this content has all been HR approved by the clients that I've worked with. So I'm going to take off the excuse right now off the table. Oh, I would never say these things that Steve did in the webinar because HR, the HR boogeyman under the bed. You have to take that excuse off the table. It's just simply not true. Now, having said that, the asterisk is check with your HR partner. What is your process for your organization? And it typically goes like this, a verbal warning followed by a written warning that goes into their file, followed by a signed warning. And after that, maybe they go into an action plan or a performance improvement plan. So there's usually fairly traditional and structured HR processes. But that aside, so just know I'm not telling you what your HR policy should be in your organization. That's not up to me. That's up to you and your company. For me, though, so Steve, when does this conversation become HR? When, becomes a performance management conversation and not a two-way dialogue and not a coaching conversation? Well, it depends. For me, when I introduce the C word in these conversations, it now opens up the HR pathway. And the C word is consequences, if appropriate and necessary. So if they don't want to change, they disagree with you, you're going to agree to disagree. Hey, it looks like, Jorge, we're going to agree to disagree. You think you are cooperating and collaborating and turning your expense reports in time. I don't agree with that, Jorge. And by the way, folks, in these conversations, at some point, someone's going to be right and someone's going to be wrong. When you draw a line in the sand, non-negotiables in your workplace expectations, there's not a lot of gray area at some point. And so, as we say in refereeing, I'm a soccer referee, if you're going to be wrong, be strong. But if you backpedal in these conversations, in my opinion, you've just lost. I hate to put it in a zero-sum game, but that's just my experience. So you got to be really clear going into these what your request is. If they're not going to acquiesce to your request, then I introduce consequences. So I introduce, so it's just like this. Hey, Jorge, look, I'm fine. You want to agree to disagree? That's fine. You want to win the debate? Hey, I'll let you win the debate, whatever you need to do here. But I want to be clear right now, Jorge, there's two pathways in front of you. This is my language. And I want you to be clear of the consequences of these two pathways. So one, if you don't want to make an agreement with me, here's a pathway we're stepping into right now. We're stepping into an HR pathway. This conversation is going to be documented anyway, and you're going to sign it. And you're going to go on to an action plan. In my organizations, that's what we'd have next is an action plan, which is typically a 30 or 60 day opportunity for the person to course correct and turn things around. It's still coaching. But I let them know that's the consequence. Or if they agree with me, yes, boss, I have your agreement. I'm going to start treating my colleagues with more respect. I'm going to turn my expense reports in on time. Then I'll say, hey, I just want to be clear though, Jorge, this is the third time we've talked about that. This time, if you break it, here's the consequence. And let them know what the consequences is. So you got to think these things out before these conversations, folks. That's why I say you got to prepare for these. And one of the things I want you to prepare for, what are the consequences? What are your non-negotiables? What are the consequences? And maybe what are your negotiables? I don't know. Sometimes there's negotiables you can prepare for. But be prepared to introduce the C word, consequences. In my mind, you are now lifting the gate up on the HR pathway and process. And folks, become good documenters. That second time I gave them feedback on this behavior, I put that in writing and I had them sign that, by the way. That's where we are right now. I already have a piece of paper with their signature on it because I'm already building a paper trail. And, if you get charged for some sort of unlawful termination, you want to have a great paper trail. So if you're not a good documenter, become a good documenter. HR loves you for that, and it protects you and the company, and it doesn't expose you to liability. It helps you not become exposed to liability. But again, my final word on that is talk to your HR partner. Those are our 5 skills today. We pushed through them, folks. Mastery is built on the fundamentals. I'm going to come over to my screen. I'm going to check our chat room. Any questions, comments? Let me scroll down through here. We went through a lot of information fast and furious. Sometimes this content I introduce can cause heartburn for people. And, one thing you get to see on these webinars with Steve, yours truly, is obviously I have my point of view and I have my leadership and management style. It's not for everybody, and it's not for you. The important thing is that we're going to be most successful when you know your people, right? And you know them as individuals, and we treat them as individuals. And that's why it's so important to build important relationships. I don't see any questions, Aaron. Do we have any questions rolling in? If they are, why they are, folks, email me with any questions or comments, suggestions for a follow-up webinar on this. Some folks have already requested they would like to see me in action, real playing and role playing with real workplace scenarios for these skills to be demonstrated and modeled. I'm sorry that didn't happen on this one today, but the next one, it will. I'll put myself in the hot seat because I'm never going to ask you to do anything that I'm not going to do myself. You know that about me, if you do know me. Any questions? Aaron, can you chat me? No questions. Send me a message. Some final thoughts here before people go back to their busy, busy day. Mastery is built on the fundamentals. Thank you, everybody, for your continued commitment to your leadership and management development with this micro training today. Congratulations to you. You know that development is not an event, it's a process. Go forward and apply some of these skills today. Do not avoid these conversations. When you get proactive and initiate these conversations, they're going to go well. They usually, right, they go much better than we anticipated. And paradoxically, most of the time, your relationship gets stronger when you work through these sticky issues in the workplace. Am I right? And most of the time we go, wow, that actually went better than I thought. And so be super proactive for all the right reasons. Remember, if you drag your feet on these conversations, you now have a leadership credibility challenge. Now people are looking at you like, what are he or she going to do about it? Everybody knows about it. So you only compound your stress when you avoid. So don't do ostrich management. Bury your head in the sand about these conversations. These fundamental tools, stays, and skills will give you the confidence and competence to show up and hold these conversations in a very effective way. And nobody's going to die. You may get your heart rate up a little bit, but work on your emotional intelligence. Just sit and breathe. Notice where your stress is. Ask a question. Buy yourself some time. Use the skills that you have. Use silence and pausing to your advantage. I'm not seeing any questions. I saved 10 minutes at the end for some great questions. I'm not seeing any, which is okay. I know I'm not that good that I answered all your questions. So if you're still on the line, which some folks are, we still have folks on the line. If you have any questions, and the next webinar, I am going to do some role plays and real plays. And I don't see any questions. Okay, there was a question earlier about how to use these techniques with a supervisor. Hey, Steve, a lot of this is coming from a managerial perspective. Can these tools be used effectively when talking to a supervisor? Of course. You can use these skills talking to a peer or a colleague. There's a concept in corporate America known as managing up, managing the boss, or coaching the boss. All of these skills are designed to keep the conversation psychologically and emotionally safe so they can be productive. So these tools have a wide range of applications to colleagues horizontally or vertically or downwards into your direct reports, which today was largely about is difficult conversations down in the organization. So you're a manager to a supervisor or a supervisor to a direct report. Yes, these are all universally applicable. I want you to still all keep them in mind. I try them with my spouse. I have about a 5% success rate, but when I do it well, they go pretty well. Keeping it psychologically safe, setting good agendas. Hey, here's what I want to talk about, using my contrasting statements. Here's what I don't want to happen. Here's what I do want to. Hey, my intention is when things go sideways. Hey, my intention is here. I want us to win. So yes, these tools, great question, folks. And your supervisors should be trained in these. These are, of course, obviously vital communication tools and skills if you're in a supervisory position. If you have direct reports under you, this is an important skill set to have, as you know. If you can master this skill set, you're on the way to really reducing a lot of noise in the workplace. And by the way, folks, let me make a caveat I didn't mention. These skills you learned today, there's two things. You can't fix bad people. You can be the best communicator in the world, and you can't rearrange people's DNA. So if you've hired bad, this can't fix bad. All right, so just know that there's some caveats here. And again, if you don't have good, close working relationships with your people, you're a poor communicator, or you've been a poor communicator as you've gotten so busy, and communication has been largely one way and not good flow, and spending one-on-ones with your people as you should be. You know me, you should have regular one-on-ones with your people. Then these conversation skill sets aren't going to be that useful for you. Just because, and also I find when I say a bad hire, I also find if you have a less mature employee, sometimes you're younger employees, so maturity makes a big difference, and people's ability to be professional on these conversations. So I use this word professional. Oftentimes with professional comes maturity. And so, you know, if you have a less mature employee, these conversations can be tough. I mean, they can just not go anywhere because the person is simply does not have the capabilities to internalize this information. All right. Good question. Hopefully that answered your question, folks. Jeff, manager, coming from managerial, can these be? Yeah, 2 questions about the supervisor. Lisa as well. Hopefully that answered your question. Yep, definitely. Here's a provoking question for you as we're heading to the top of the hour, folks. Actually, the author of Straight Talk asked this question, and I love it. Why don't we just talk like this all the time? I mean, what is so frightening about this, I guess? Well, here's what managers say when I ask them that question. Well, Steve, we were taught to be nice. This isn't nice talk. And isn't that so true? If you look at the culture we were brought up in, you know, look at the messages we've received. Well, if you don't have something nice to say, don't say it at all, right? So we have this baggage around being direct, I think. This is my working theory. You know, I've talked about this with you managers too. There's a lot of baggage about being candid. It's not nice. But again, we're back to this place. If you care about your people and you want them to be successful and win, why wouldn't you be honest with them about their performance? Those two realities can't coexist. How many times has this happened? People got passed over for a promotion or had a demotion or some sort of disciplinary action. They got some tough feedback and the person said, why didn't anyone tell me? Right? How often does that happen? Well, shame on us, right? Shame on managers that should be allowed to take on our shift. So we're just in that space where let's be kind, let's be nice, and let's be candid. I think those two can live side by side. And most people, quite frankly, are pretty resilient and they can handle and take these conversations, at least my experience. Isn't that true? Most of the time, when we hold them right, it goes pretty well. So seeing if there's any more questions or comments. Stay tuned. There's going to be an advanced webinar, and this coming up with more real plays and role plays, and we'll see some more complexity, how to use some of these skills in various situations. And then also stay tuned. Our most recent, freshest new webinar coming up, I apologize, is new manager promotion pathways and processes. So you're thinking about tapping someone to become a supervisor or a manager. Let's get better at this, folks. We spend 2% of our time promoting and recruiting and 75% of our time managing our bad recruiting and promoting, right? Does it feel that way sometimes? So let's take some of that 75% of energy management, let's put it up front to discipline, methodical on our hiring, promoting, training, and onboarding practices. So we can not get into the place where we end up hiring bad managers, which cost the business lots of money, lots of money. So that's the upcoming webinar, promotion pathways and processes for promoting new managers and supervisors. Stay tuned for that. Let's get good at this because most of us just aren't that good at it. And the statistics bear that out. Great managers like you all on today's webinar Remember, you matter a lot. You have a 75% impact on your employees' engagement. So you count a lot, which is directly correlated to the profitability, long-term productivity and profitability of your company. Management is important. Folks are coming off today. Looks like, can't wait. I'm developing a person on my team right now for future leadership. Look forward to learning more about how to do that purposefully. Great, Angela. That's going to be the target zone. Come look forward. Stay tuned. Folks, thanks for joining today. Thanks for active participation. Thanks for your support. Steve Ruff, coaching community. Email me for anything, anytime. Also suggestions, topics for upcoming webinars. Have a super rest of the week and go. Keep it simple. Keep it fun, and definitely keep it inspiring. Thanks, everybody. Have a great one.